he goes, man, like, you're a really nice, like, quiet guy, you know, soft-spoken, but, like, it wouldn't surprise me if you were out there, like, being a serial killer or something.
This video will detail a fighter who promises violence.
And the first thing that popped into my head was like, I was about to rip that guy's chest open and start eating his heart.
So let's explore the psychology of a modern warrior.
Statement, Joe Rogan.
That was an exclamation point on top of a statement.
Defeat is often a place where an individual's mind can be irrevocably altered.
You know, I like Hinduism, I like Eastern philosophy, I like the idea of, like, you know, Buddhism and, you know, being really peaceful and having a Zen mind and being really free from all the suffering of the world and trying to get there. And that was kind of my philosophy, you know, up until I was choked out by Sterling and opened up my eyes and I hear him running around and celebrating, and I was like, fuck that. Everyone that I go into a fight now with, I'm really trying to hurt. Like, I want to be the guy that's running around the cage and they're opening up their eyes.
That's how you get it.
The Octagon stands as a poignant reminder that our yearning for violent competition has not wavered from eons past. The ancient Roman Colosseum reaches out from antiquity with a callous wave that beckons us to extend its brutal legacy. It stands as a monument to the phrase, War. War never changes. The tale of a warrior often starts in an uncanny way. For the protagonist of this story, it was when he, a skinny, pale, lanky 16-year-old basketball player, walked into high-altitude MMA gym, there to test his mettle against the budding stars of this Coloradan mixed martial arts haven. The road that lay ahead for him would be imbued with sweat, blood and tears, and the mats that lined the gym floor would soon be thought of as his home. That perfect fighter who had yet to taste adversity in the Octagon, however, was simply that, a fighter. Another man amongst the plethora of would-be combatants that lined the UFC rankings, all clawing to clutch the crown with a desperate grasp. But as he lay tangled between the limbs of Aljamain Sterling, the blood vessels and windpipes slowly being restricted until consciousness ceased, did Cory Sandhagen die. And in that darkness, the eternal black void, a warrior was born. And as his eyes fluttered open, a new reality lay smouldering before him, one that was entwined with the cinders of defeat. But within those ashes, a new fire would be kindled, one that would ignite a refusal within Cory to no longer be a victim of another man's will. See, war is art. It's an undying, beautiful and necessary aspect of our existence, symbiotic with our culture. From the glorification of video game gore to the romanticism of conflict-era films, we gorge on war's vivid and resonant spectacle. Champions arise from the ashes of brutality, bastions of some dreadful and primitive aspect of our most savage selves. And as the pining for violence remains unfettered, so does the presence of warriors within our society. Sometimes there is a place for such beings, wartime heroes there to defend freedom and the innocent, or more simply a fighter to stand as an idol, a symbol that conflict can be conquered and victory can be achieved. Regardless of the many forms of battle and conflict that are so prevalent in our society, one thing remains true: war. War never changes.
But I also think that there's always a reason for the shit that happened, you know? And for me, it was as simple as, like, man, I just wasn't intense walking into the cage. I wasn't, like, ready to go.
Too relaxed?
Way too relaxed. And I was talking to a military buddy of mine because, I mean, that's as intense as it gets.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing more intense than having to, you know, engage in, like, killing someone. And I was like, man, so, like, what is that? Like, how do you get to that? And he was like, man, when you kick open the door, you better be ready. You know, like, that's where I need to be before I walk into every single fight, because this isn't really a game. Like, I didn't like coming to, you know, opening my eyes and seeing this dude run around the cage in celebration. This is not a game anymore to me. This is like, this is battle, and it's conquering. you know, so it changed a lot in my head, you know, and I started reading war books. I mean, the Book of Five Rings, The Art of War, a bunch of books that I don't even want to recommend because I don't want my opponents to read them, you know?
Cory's loss to Aljamain Sterling would prove to be a pivotal moment in his life. Often a loss is a damaging and fragmenting event that can not only catastrophically scar an individual's ego, but also alter how they appraise themselves athletically. Cory's self-admitted humiliating defeat forced him to reconcile his mental shortcomings. As a psychology student, it only made sense that the path to betterment lay inward. In quiet contemplation, Sandhagen would be drawn to the ancient war philosophers and tacticians of our storied past. It is in The Art of War and the Book of Five Rings that he would find a new way to conceptualize competition in the Octagon, and whilst it may seem obvious to others when considering the utility of such teachings, to many others it may seem as a farce. But the noticeable evolution that Sandhagen went through speaks for itself, and it is in these books that planted the seed for growth. Needless to say, we are all fighting for something. This is why the art of war is adopted not only by warriors in the literal sense of the word, but also many other men of the modern era. Musashi's Book of Five Rings can easily be adopted by a samurai, as a painter. The art of war by a general, as easily as a businessman. The principles entwined within these books can carry us through our very existence. Life is a battleground, and upon it we wage war. Psychological warfare is often a misunderstood aspect of the sport, perceived by some as a non-existent force within the fight game, easier to dismiss as peacocking and theatrics. But to Cory and many other fighters, they understand the tangible effects that energy and intimidation can bring to the fight game, a snare there to embroil the emotional opponent.
I think that people carry around energy, obviously, and like pretty much the entire time I'm in fight week, or or definitely when we're facing off or anything, in my head I'm thinking I'm gonna kill you, you know?
Oh, I can feel it right now, dude. Even though you're just kind of like, you know, putting it in the air just to kind of show it, it's kind of crazy because I really can feel like, not that you're trying to kill me, but just that you're putting that thing out there like this force field almost.
We saw the suffocating weight of Conor's words drag Aldo into the depths, there to drown him in anxious anticipation. That choking bile of hate and bitterness had asphyxiated rationality.
Look into my eyes, little man. Little Brazilian.
Aldo had lost before a single punch was thrown. The historical relevance that is deeply entrenched with ancient warfare may have lost its value and potency under the glittering lights and 4K cameras of the modern arena that is the Octagon. But when Mark Hunt walked out to a hacker or Shane Young faced off with one, they weren't reveling in tradition, they were calling forth from the bowels of history the fighting spirit of their forefathers, the intimidation tactics used by warriors of their ancestral past. Cory's channeling of these tactics is not to besmirch ritual and ceremony, but rather to honour the atavistic mindset of those who knew war as a part of daily life. Psychological warfare has its roots far into the past. Alexander the Great, once whilst fleeing the grasp of the enemy, outnumbered and outclassed, ordered his armourers to construct helmets and chest plates that would fit the men of 7 feet to 8 feet tall. He left them behind in the wake of his retreat, and when the opposing force stumbled upon them, they thought better than to carry on the offensive, and retreated back into their lands. It's a reminder that fear and doubt can be placed into the enemy without direct conflict, and so when that ethereal ooze seeps out from the haunting gaze of an undeterred challenger, it echoes the past. That single-minded devotion to blood and warfare can be etched into the face of the beholder. It stimulates the opponent's adrenal glands, flooding their terrified corpse with cortisol. Psychological arousal becomes the enemy. Their breath becomes heavy and irregular, their arms stiff and empty, and a new, sickening reality washes over them. A flood of daunting realization. This man might kill me.
They lost the fight before they even got hit, most guys. I knew the art of skullduggery. I knew how to beat these guys psychologically before I even got in the ring with them.
And if this aspect of the sport was called into question, all you must do is look at men of the same ilk as McGregor and Tyson to see psychological warfare be waged to success. As fight fans, we have seen it a plethora of times.
You wanna before the fight came, like, you doing the USADA drug test thing. Rose was walking back through the hallway with her official, and she crossed paths with Joanna, and all by herself. And Joanna, go ahead.
I think she asked me something like, did you buy the ticket? Or I was like, what? She's like, do you believe him? Or do you believe in him? Or something like that.
Do you believe him? Did you buy the ticket?
Yeah.
And then she walked off.
And didn't say nothing. And I was just like, what?
For 3 or 4 minutes, Trevor, Tony, Rose, and I all sat in the locker room
just like silent, like what the fuck?
because that was the little thing that could have fucked everything up. Because I know I was sitting there like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Our dismissal is optional, but the next time we see Cory walk to the cage, we might know what he is thinking, why he is thinking it. Perhaps the pixels on the screen cannot register the palpable energy that exudes from Cory, but if history tells us anything, in his presence, we would certainly feel it.
It's not like other sports, you know, like that's why I made it about war, like I made it about battle, and listening to Gaethje talk actually helps me a lot too, because that dude is like, I want this guy to see his own blood, like he'll talk, you know, like almost a little crazy to compared to like our civilized culture, you know, and that's not like, it's not really a sport to me anymore.
After the devastating loss, Cory's mindset shift was evident. He now wanted to become something different.
Literally, man, it's like war, it's battle. Like when I walked into that Moraes fight, I had zero fear, because I was, and you hear guys say this all the time, like I'm ready to die in there, blah blah blah.
You're
you know,
accepting it.
Yeah, and it sounds real corny and cheesy, like when you're not in that headspace, but it's real, and like you got to be there. And I made that fight like, this isn't me winning, losing, getting closer to a belt. It was like, I'm either living or I'm dying in this fight. And
that was found in the books of the Art of War and the Book of Five Rings. His matchup against Marlon Moraes was a chance to prove that what he had learned could be put into practice. Know thyself, know thy enemy. 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories.
It was like, I'm either living or I'm dying in this fight, and it was a cool place to be. Like it actually felt like good, you know, like it was fun, like it was enjoyable to like be one with that like primal, ancient type of feeling inside of me.
Yeah,
you know?
it's a badass place.
The official time, 1 minute, 3 seconds, round number 2. Referee Mark Goddard steps in and halts this bout for your winner by TKO, Cory Sandhagen.
Cory speaks of an ancient and primitive mindset, one that allows him to enact war inside the Octagon, and as he enumerates chaos and violence in physical flesh, we are left to ponder what the purpose of war is. That question eluded Cory for so long, until clutching the art of war in his hands in the wake of defeat. It is here where Sun Tzu, a historical military tactician and philosopher from ancient China, who had distilled the essence of war's objective into a singular, fine point, and that is victory. Victory is the main objective in war. That may seem laughable to some, or even so obnoxiously obvious that you feel outwitted by simplicity, but the fact is, war can be waged for many things, not just victory, such as prestige, honour, treasure, and love, to name but a few. It is within those distractions that focus can be lost, and the enemy retrieves the upper hand. Therefore, victory must be sought after with single-minded devotion, a sentiment that echoes the teachings of Musashi. It's a simple thought, yet a poignant one. That means that victory must be prepared for with drive and focus, ruthless and relentless training with one goal in mind: quick and decisive victory. Perhaps most importantly, Sun Tzu states that war must not be started if victory has not been secured beforehand. A victorious army tries to create conditions for victory before seeking battle. What does this mean in practicality, however? Well, after bouncing back from his loss to Aljamain Sterling by dispatching Marlon Moraes in spectacular fashion, Cory would be matched up with Frankie Edgar, a longtime veteran, and a man whose game plan has been spelled out for decades.
You know, in wrestling we always say hands and feet move at the same time.
One should not take the first step without knowing the last. It was the first time for many people to see the legend Frankie Edgar laid out on the canvas, completely removed from consciousness, and it was a sobering reminder that longevity in this sport is decided by age and not by skill. It also signified the true awakening of some bestial spirit within Cory, evoking the ancient terror of those deadly and efficient warriors that once tread our lands. The knee that separated Frankie from this realm didn't come out of nowhere. Frankie didn't just get caught, he was lulled into a trap, a snare that was set and placed in the training rooms of high elevation MMA gym. Preparation defeated Frankie, not opportunity. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. This moment solidified Cory's position within the division and had propelled him into a #1 contenders fight with a former training partner and a fighter who loomed over the division as the lineal champ.
I'm supposed to be the best in the world, and I just got my butt handed to me in practice. You know, we got kids like one of my buddies, Cory Sandhagen, that I train with now at a muscle farm in Colorado, and he'll get the better of me, and he's not even in the UFC yet.
In the face-off, you could visibly see a different aura emanating from Cory, and for TJ, instead of facing a man he knew well in the practice room, was instead staring down the physical manifestation of war itself.
For the winner by split decision, TJ Dillashaw!
The fight, however, was lost, and it goes to show that despite our best intentions, sometimes the cosmos has other plans for our flesh. Often a storyline seems destined, a tale of a fighter who ascends the throne with perfection, or a fighter who rises to the top from the ruins of defeat. But this sport has a design beyond our comprehension. It turns hope and dreams into dust, and Cory's resurgence was razed to ash and scattered into the wind. But despite this loss, the sport in all its mysticism had a different future for Cory that he wasn't expecting. The razor-close split decision against TJ afforded Cory a chance to claim gold, whilst TJ sat on the sidelines injured.
With Aljamain Sterling out of his title fight, Brett Okamoto has confirmed that Piotr Jan will face Cory Sandhagen for the interim title.
When you get the interim title, will you consider that a world championship?
I think Aljamain had to retreat. TJ's village is still on fire. If we're talking like ancient war type stuff, I'm the guy that can take the land.
Bantamweight champion of the world, Piotr No Mercy Jan!
He was better tonight, man. I have nothing else to say. I always ask, I want to fight the best in the world. I know that that's what's going to make me the best martial artist that I can be. And I'm grateful I got to do it tonight. I'll take from it and I'll learn from it. And next time I face him, I'll get the win.
It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And so Cory finds himself here again, at a precipice, destined to fall down into the darkly depths of sorrow and defeat. That empty chamber filled with a cacophony of uttered commiserations and whispered comforts. And have we not all been here before? The bowels of some cathartic ruin that shows us the errors of our own ways. But this is the thing about loss. To speak of it with such misery is to misplace its agency. We've explored loss on this channel many times and in many ways, and whilst mental resilience is what dragged Tony through some of the worst times of his life, and it was a promise that imbued Chiesa with unwavered energy to carry on despite grief, and so for Cory it was the power of his own mind that meant perseverance despite being bested in the Octagon. Every difficulty in life presents us with an opportunity. The trials we endure can and should introduce us to our strengths. The Stoics believed that individuals could not be conquered by anything external if one does not give others power over themselves. The only way something external can harm us is if we ourselves let it. If the mind is willing, the flesh could go on without many things. That journey inward is what makes men powerful. The control that Cory holds over his mind is what allows him to persevere in the face of adversity. It is folly to toil in the anguish and sorrow of defeat, and Cory understands that well. His post-fight interviews reflect that of John Kavanagh. We either win or we learn. Musashi and Sun Tzu stand as a testament to the very notion that loss and defeat are necessary. unavoidable even, and a warrior who lives in fear of it extends the nape of his neck to fate itself. And so the mark Cory intends to leave on the world is that of greatness. And if that means treading through the very fires that would scorch weaker men, then that is the cost of eminence. Life is yet a fleeting moment that threatens to slip away at any instant, but legacy is stained into the history books themselves.
Meditation is something that I started doing after I lost my first fight. I really didn't know what was going on in my mind at that time, and I thought that that was obviously an issue. The fact that my brain made me lose and feel all of those terrible feelings that come with losing made me really want to be able to control that brain. I want to be great, and you really have to dive really deep into who you are as a person, and you have to be very honest with yourself if you want to be great.
I must not fear.
The sport comes with a lot of doubt.
Fear is the mind killer.
The thing about, I think, that makes champions champions is that they're able to catch their doubts and not let their doubts eat them.
Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path.